Hello and welcome. I want to talk today a few minutes about the nature of light and color. Hi, I'm kind of kind of off my game because I just made this whole video for you. I just did this whole thing a few minutes ago and I didn't push record. So there you go. Probably the best video I've ever made. Totally lost to posterity. Okay, I'm beginning again. Here we go. I want to talk to you today about we've been reading and watching some films about the nature of light and color and additive versus subtractive color, right? And I think you remember me saying additive color is how light behaves and subtractive color is how pigment behaves. Okay? Good. The thing that's so beautiful about that they aren't the same is the kind of mental space that the idea of thinking about the way light is perceived by us opens up for us. I think it's a really beautiful notion, and I want to explain it. Okay, I have my lemon, and I have to make a little side note. You remember the other day I was talking about the pigments, and I said you're going to need a lemon yellow, and you're going to need an egg yolk yellow. And what do I have here? I have a lemon that is in very egg yolk yellow color. So, side note about lemons, my tree is a Meyer lemon tree, and it's actually a cross between a lemon and an orange. And so you get this very orange looking lemon. They're shaped pretty lemony, but they are much more orange colored. If this was a regular lemon, a lemon, it would be a more green color, okay? But it doesn't matter because we can still agree, I think, to call this yellow. Okay, here comes the light, and it's kind of coming from, from that side. In my studio, you can see that it's coming from this side and from that side, and it is falling, this light, which contains all of the colors, all of the visible spectrum, and a bunch of colors that we can't perceive, is coming in and shining onto my lemon. And what's happening with all of these wavelengths of light? Well, just like air and water and other mediums, the wavelength, the radio wave, the wave can pass through some things, and other things it's reflected back from. Okay, I'm light, I'm coming. I have all the colors that are in like this scarf coming in. I hit this, and what happens? Anything that's not yellow, the reds, the blues, the greens, the browns, all of those colors are being absorbed by this surface that we know as a lemon. And the one color or the few colors, the colors that are being reflected back out to our eyes are yellow, or how we perceive yellow. So in a way, conceptually, the lemon, although it is quite yellow, is actually absorbing all of the colors that are not yellow, and it's sort of rejecting yellow. And I love this. It's sort of a Dada idea, right? It's a really absurd notion, this idea that everything in here is kind of not yellow, right? And I love that. I love that concept. I love how kind of topsy-turvy it is. So take a few minutes to appreciate that idea. And then let's look for just a couple of minutes about the other kind of color mixing, right? The subtractive color. And I'll see if I can kind of shed a little light on it. How? I want to be clear on this. If this eludes you for some reason, or you're not that interested in the science of light, it's not important. It is important if you like it. It's important. If you don't like it, it's not important. It doesn't make having a clear concept of this or thinking this is interesting doesn't mean that your art would be interesting, right? They're not really related. You don't really need to know much to make a good painting. Let's go back to this. All right, so I have made a couple of color swatches here with the gouache, and I've added another yellow. I had put out actually four different colors of yellow. Let's talk about that first real quickly. I put out one yellow that was called lemon yellow. It's that one. I put out another one that was called primary yellow, and I think that was this one. I had another brand which also called itself primary yellow, and it was of different color. Well, it's kind of gone now because I mixed it all up, but it was a slightly different, it was sort of in between the green of the lemon yellow and the egg yolk of the primary. And then I put out another color, which is an indispensable color called yellow ochre. Ochres are an earth pigment, and they come, they dig them up on the ground, and they come in many colors. But the most common one that you see, if someone says ochre, they usually mean this kind of earthy golden yellow. And you need this if you're doing anything, if you're painting anything, I would say anything from nature. Well, maybe not the ocean, but almost anything. If you're painting seaweed, if you're painting trees, rocks, you're going to want this very beautiful earthy ochre color. And it tends to be a very inexpensive color too, which is great. The earth colors are generally less expensive than the more rare ones, like the cadmium. It's just harder to process that. And the ochre comes out of the ground pretty much ready to go. So what I did was I had put this lemon here in the first film. I had put this lemon here, and I was trying to paint the darker areas. And I wanted to point out that you can't just add black to yellow and get dark yellow, which you know already, but it's important to remember that kind of before you start painting. One of the things I had done, and of course it's a silly demonstration now, but I had taken a color. Well, it's not silly, it's just working backwards. I had taken a color that was kind of a dark, I had put blue and I had put brown into my yellow and gotten this sort of color that was not dark yellow, right, as you would expect. But it was an interesting color, and I had gotten some red, put some of that in there too, and gotten this kind of beautiful, interesting neutral color that could not be said to be yellow, though. And I used, I think, some of this too. Let's put some of that in there. Now, you may think, what? Just some of this, some of that. Is that really all it is? And yes, that is all it is. You will learn much more by messing around than you will by reading, okay? And I want you to read. I want you to know these things because they're interesting. But it's messing about with color that teaches you the most. So mess about with it as much as you possibly can. So what I had done is I had taken this kind of weird green color, which does not look like dark orange, and I had set it down here. Actually, I think it was a different shade, but it doesn't really matter. I had kind of like let it sit a few minutes because I wanted to show you how I could get it to look like a dark yellow without completely dulling it out, right? Because if I take a light color like yellow and I add a dark color, I'm subtracting its ability to reflect yellow, right? Like the lemon, right? If I put another color in there, it's going to not reflect just yellow anymore. It's going to reflect some of these other colors back out, and they're going to absorb some of the light, and it's not going to be as brilliant, right? So let's take this now and do a little glazing thing. I'm sorry if you can't hear me well because I'm kind of facing the other direction, but I said the word glazing. And that means I'm going to just apply a veil of pure yellow on top of my kind of mucky color. And it's still wet, so of course it's picking up some of it. But if I was doing a careful job, I would let this swatch dry first, and then I would go over it with the yellow. And this allows that yellow pigment to shine a little, to be a little more visible, right? It's not a very good example. My first one was much better. But that's just the way the cookie crumbles. Try this. Let's see if this one's dry enough. Yeah, that's good. Now, I don't know if you can tell this, but this is super interesting, right? What I'm getting here when I'm stacking these colors up in this way is a really visually interesting color with a lot of depth and richness to it. So don't ever be afraid to glaze things if you're not getting quite the color you want. And this will apply to our first color wheel too. You may find that you're having trouble getting the color you want, and it's fine to go back after it's dried and change it by adding another color to the top. Like let's take this pale kind of ashy color I made here. So if I go back over that with this yellow glaze, it becomes much more bright and yellow again, but it still retains some of its darker value. It's not as eloquent as I had hoped it to be. I apologize. You should have seen the first video. Anyway, okay. Mostly what I'm hoping to get to have happen for you is for you to have a little space in your mind to open up to these interesting conceptual parts of color, right? And not so much that you need to remember that every time you open up your paint, but that you think, oh, wow, what could it mean to think about these things a little differently? Because that's really what artists love to do. All right, that's all for now. See you soon.